All right, this Supreme Court sideshow hearing on the immunity claim is just like everything else in Trump's world, just like the fake auto workers in the non-union auto workshop and the central casting, the people who were paid to just hold signs that they support Trump at his thing, all of that stuff. This is a more expensive version. He's using the Supreme Court as his extras. We've got the men on the Supreme Court that are looking for every excuse in the sun, under the sun, to pass it back to Congress. Every other sentence that they make is, shouldn't Congress decide whether or not there's a criminal issue? And they throw it back to different moments and different everything, back to Grant, to Nixon, of course, is in there, back and forth. And the arguments being that Nixon, actually, it's understood with Nixon and Ford that Nixon needed the pardon and Nixon accepted the pardon because presidents can be prosecuted for criminal acts while they're president. Just like the recordings of Watergate and all this other stuff, they touched on some historical significance with their BS arguments. But here's the problem. They kept going back to leaning to how Congress should have determined whether or not there is some sort of crime that is committed, whether or not is under the purview of just part of his duty, and whether or not it's something that, Obama was some sort of criminal and had a whole bunch of people unalived while he was president, is the claim that Trump's, world is trying to state, which is, like everything else, complete bullshit. Then you have moments with Amy Coney Barrett, who literally challenged Trump's attorney and put off the act like she's actually making sense and actually fighting for justice, when she challenged Trump's attorney by saying, between private acts, private acts should not get immunity. Granted, put it, okay, presidents, while on the job, with reasonable expectation of not breaking laws. If a president specifically breaks a law, while he should not be immune from prosecution. They brought up a peaceful protest. They were talking about, if a president encourages a group of people to protest a law that they're against, like abortion laws and things like that, that should not be an issue. That should be part of the job. So they were trying to blur that line between a peaceful protest and the passage of a law, and that being okay to try and delay that process. Almost like J6 was one of those situations, a peaceful protest. And then you have Amy Coney Barrett, who challenged the Trump's lawyer about private acts shouldn't get immunity. If it's private lives, in the private life of the person, Donald Trump, and they do things that are illegal, or they do things that are out of the purview of the presidency, for instance, and she brought up having turning to private attorneys that are willing to spread knowingly false claims of election fraud and spearhead the challenges to the election results. And Trump's attorney agreed that that is a private, so that would not have immunity, giving a little bit of hope that, hey, maybe the Supreme Court's actually looking at this for what it is, crimes. And then she goes on to say the petitioner conspired with another private counsel who caused the filing in court of verifications signed by petitioner contained false allegations to support a challenge. Trump's lawyer said that sounds like private. They were talking about signing the false documents, saying all the documents were handed over and stuff like that. She actually called out the things that Trump is being charged for now, and his own lawyer said, that's not a presidential act. That is a private act. Therefore, he could be charged criminally. So Barrett is sitting there presenting this, giving people hope that they're actually looking for a reason to, provide justice in the Supreme Court. God forbid. And then you have, finally, the big bear himself hath spoken. We have the men on the panel basically searching for that blurred line between J6 and any peaceful protest for any law that people don't like teachers carrying guns or abortion laws or anything like that. It's the same thing as J6. I mean, never mind, police officers getting beaten, unalived, and, people like that. Forget things like that. That didn't really happen. The taking down the American flag, putting up, the breaking the windows, defecating on senators' desks, Congress people's desks, all that stuff. And what's going on is actually really, really scary because the manipulation is a majority, just the men, just like in the overturning Roe versus Wade, just like the 14th Amendment arguments. He stacks the deck. He stacks the deck so he gets what he wants at every level. Eileen Cannon was one of the first judges because she's in the jurisdiction of his properties where he knows crimes will be committed, if not have already been committed. He did that for every single judge that he could personally interview and place when he first got into office. He did that on purpose. He stacked the DOJ. He changed DOJ people 3 or 4 different times. Remember the guy who created the deep toilets? Yeah, he was running the Attorney General. I mean, this is what Donald Trump does. And the problem is now everything is resting in the hands of the Supreme Court. The majority, his buddies. Now here's the issue. They are trying to pass it back down to Congress or to the lower courts, which is just a delay tactic. Whether or not they actually put a firm ruling through, this is all a delay. If they do put a full ruling through and give him immunity, which would be the biggest miscarriage of American justice in history, but it will also give immunity to Joe Biden, which gives him a little bit of an opportunity to bring out Dark Brandon on steroids there, but we'll get to that later on. But passing it down to other courts, handing it off, kicking the can down the road, just like they did with the 14th Amendment stuff, just like everything else, they're pushing it beyond the election, giving Trump an opportunity to get back in office, God forbid. That is what they're doing, and that is Trump's game plan from the get-go. Now, I can only hope, with all of our national patriotism and wisdom, that we make damn sure we have such a huge blue wave coming through Washington and across the country, coast to coast, that there are no arguments, no Russian help can surpass the number of votes that come in legitimately. Because he is getting help right now. He's going to get help again in the election. We need to make damn sure the election does not go his way, that he can't con his way back into the White House. We need to make sure, because if he does, we will not have another election. He has flat out said so. The Republicans that are in power need to be voted out as well. We need to regain balance in this country in a way that no one can question anything. That is the only way justice will be served with Trump and his trials, and that is why every country like China and Russia and North Korea are all basically teaming up to try and get this guy back in the White House, because then they get everything they ever wanted. I cannot stress enough the importance of this vote and getting out to vote. I cannot stress enough that the evidence that has been collected needs to come out into the public eye. I cannot stress enough, because it is what's important for the legitimacy of our votes, especially the Republican ones. The evidence needs to be in front of anybody who swears they are America first. Because if they refuse to want to see the evidence, they are not America first, they are Trump first. We need to be diligent, we need to stay educated, and we need to be kind. We are all in this together, whether we like it or not.